People in Boston are all too familiar with the notoriety of the city's racial divide. It's a problem you can also find in other cities, along with violence. But people who examine those problems can also share lessons, even from a time that was more contentious. That's the purpose of a new work of fiction with a strong local flavor called Neighborhood Lines. We'd like to welcome the author, Michael Patrick Murphy. Thank you very much for being with us, Michael.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
This is a book mainly about two high school students in the late 1980s. Tell me what it was like when you were a high school student at that time.
Yeah, so 1988, we went to high school at BC High, and that was a time where the school program had increased diversity throughout, and had a white Irish Catholic kids in school for the first time with black students, Asian students, Latino students, and created some tensions on the school grounds. And the city landscape was also having certain things had gone on, like the Fair Housing Act of 1988, Fair Housing Act of 1968. There was an NAACP lawsuit against the BHA, which integrated the all-white housing projects in Dorchester, in South Boston and Charlestown. So the tensions we had certainly increased.
Well, of course, what you're talking about in this book is what goes on between the different students, and you've got two students here we're concentrating on. We have Nate and we have Patrick. Tell me about Patrick.
Yeah, Patrick's a white Irish Catholic student that is from South Boston, and his mother had chosen to go to a Catholic school in lieu of the public schools, where there was even more racial tensions, where you would have to go through the metal detectors at South Boston High, and there were constantly some violence and interactions there. So she sent him over to BC High, and all of a sudden there's a new diversity program there, which she wasn't too pleased with. And so Patrick had adjusted well and was a leader amongst his peers, so he had to walk the fine line of being neutral, but also staying true to his own neighborhood and his own ethnicity, and trying to keep the peace throughout the school grounds.
Now, you have Nate, the African-American student, and his mother played an important role, too.
She did. She was a very disciplined and focused woman that tried to keep her son out of trouble all the time. And interesting enough, I had just read a Globe article that mentioned how William Gross's mother was, and an attorney from Boston had said, "This is amazing how close it is to Nate's mom," and I felt very good about that, because it rang the authenticity that I wanted to go for.
Now, what Patrick and Nate have in common is they have either relatives or friends who are kind of going off in the wrong direction. Talk about how that influences them, at least how they contend with it.
Yeah, I think that we all have, as William Gross had said in the newspaper the other day, that it's a battle of good and evil all the time, every moment of life. And we find people go down the wrong paths, or get led down the wrong paths, or with the wrong groups, and find themselves in evil or violent situations. And they both have had, the both main characters both found that their cousins and friends were either gangbanging or getting involved with organized crime, which they were both feeling the pulls from their friends and their families to join go down that path, and they needed to stay disciplined and stay focused to avoid those troubles.
Tell me about what this says about what Boston was like, because I remember this period, and I knew people personally who were like that. I mean, this wasn't just that something happened to a few people in a few neighborhoods. This is normal in Boston.
This is normal in Boston. It's a great comment. In 1990, it was the highest murder rate I think Boston has seen, so that was the landscape. But this is the only city where you could have a friend who's a Boston cop, and also a friend who's going into organized crime, and a bookie and things like that. It's very unique, because that's what we, as the youth that grew up in this area, in this city, has been passed down from generation to generation. That was the environment. That was a normal path to take.
And another thing too, aside from the racial conflict or even the drug crimes that were pretty bad in that time, is sometimes that stupid violence. You know, when guys go out drinking on a Friday or a Saturday night, something happens after the bar closes. And in your book here, it's like one of those cases, and this could have ruined a kid for life.
Exactly. It consistently happens, and I do recall in Faneuil Hall or in South Boston, the Abbey, certain bars that afterwards there would be just fight after fight after fight, where you could just sit there and watch and wait to see an event of just blatant violence for no reason, just for looking at someone the wrong way, and that was the environment at the time.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Michael Patrick Murphy, author of Neighborhood Lines. Michael, another thing that your book explores here is the code of silence, because Nate has to observe it and Patrick has to observe it. Explain how that works for them.
Yes, as we know, in the South Boston neighborhood or the Charlestown neighborhood, and in the white Irish ethnicity, that ratting was a enough to get you outcast or excommunicated, as we say in the old history. But anything of ratting would be was always subject to be killed for. So no matter what it was, as we reference in the book, whether it be a racial slur along the wall, or stabbing, or someone just getting caught with drugs and ratting out, that was the worst crime of anything. And we saw that come to fruition at the end of Whitey Bulge's obviously reign, and how his soldiers and his partners were completely shocked by how that all played out, and they went into the courtroom and really looked him right in the eye about those rumors and those realities of what was going on behind the scenes. With Nate, and as we know, I have several Boston police officers that are in the gang units and in these neighborhoods. But if you rat, or you're even seen talking to the police, you're a marked person, and you have to stick to that code of silence to just protect yourself and get out and live. So I think they both had to face that on a daily basis, and that's what, without telling too much, that's what we see towards the end of the book.
Well, without giving away too much, one of the things that your book describes is how the narrative of racial conflict can be imposed on a certain set of facts that point in a different direction, and that there's a need for what I guess more exposure around that.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that I think it's amazing that I wrote this in 1998, actually, based on what I had experienced for the past 10 years, and it was very volatile at the time, and now all of a sudden, 30 years later, I feel it's still very, very prevalent in the issues that we see or we hear about, or that are not talked about, but they're really there. I had actually gone to several schools and had several conversations with community leaders, and they're saying, wow, this is an amazing timing for this book, and it really needs to be out there. And I was excited about that. But some of the schools that I went to were saying, we're dealing with issues right now, and this is really good that you've written this, and we're going to see if we can get this out to some of the students and the youth. And that's what it's intended for, is for youth to read it, identify with the past, and identify with their present, to see if we can get along, discuss it. If you're not discussing it, it's really just sliding it, and then it erupts. It was amazing to me that when I went to UMass Boston, that's where I'd written this, and they have a great exhibit on desegregation in Boston. And what they had found was that it was continually in all of the schools, they're teaching about desegregation, and they're teaching it about the South. And it's like, it was amazing to me, because I was like, why not teach what this city has gone through, and what the challenges were and the obstacles, and how much progress they've actually made since 1974 and 1984 and 1988. We should be teaching and how courageous the white women and the black women, and how they're sending their children to different schools and public schools, and all the challenges around that, what they went through. We should be learning from our own history.
You know, a lot of people experience that history, they process it one way or another, but they don't write a book about it. What made you really want to write this book?
I had a friend that I had met in high school, and I felt that we had certain lines we couldn't cross, just even in the cafeteria or even around our other peers. And it was a good relationship. And because of the environment and our ethnicities and our backgrounds, we weren't able to really indulge in that relationship. And I now have since done so, and I'm really happy that we've done that. And I found myself always seem to feel like I've been in certain racial incidents or around topics that or conflicts that were around race. And even though I wasn't a racist, it was just because where I was, the line that I had crossed, and or the line that I had seen a black kid cross, and I felt it's amazing that this is happening, and I really just wanted to write it down. And so I did, and I just kept building upon a story to create from my own relationship, my own experiences, my friends' experiences, and they're very plentiful in this city. So
Yes, indeed. Finally, Michael, we should mention people want to track this book down. What's the best way to find it?
it is on Amazon, download for Kindle or purchase for softcover, as well as our neighborhoodlines.com. And we encourage people to please write a review on Amazon so we can continue to get it out there throughout America and throughout the high schools of this country.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Michael
Appreciate it.
Patrick Murphy.